person that you miss. My mind draws a blank. I wanna go back to the early days when life was an escape. Now I just wait for better days. I lost myself in your reality. Lost myself. I lost myself in your reality. Lost myself. I filled our life according to a friend. We're all shrink wrapped in families and making ends meet, stuck in jobs we'll never leave. I never wanna be like that, so I wanna go back to my reality. Wanna go back. I wanna go back to my reality. Wanna go back. Didn't mean to sound so concerning. Am I alone in the hurt?
I thought that was the end of the song. Is that not the end of the song? Oh man, I thought that was the end of the song. Apparently this is the middle. Is this the middle of the song? Uh-oh, witness protection's here. Witness protection's got to be a bot. Oh my god, I go to open a bottle of water and it's the end of the song. What's up, nerds? What are you doing? It's Monday. You know what that means? Got to refresh the chat box. We're going to wait all the way till Monday where we come down here and refresh the chat box to see what the chat box is doing. Oh, there we go. Now the chat box is working. Sorry, I had to get a drink of water. Mickham reminded me that I had coffee breath. So I opened a bottle of water. Mickham's going to make some coffee. I got some coffee there. All good. All good times. Monday. Okay. Okay. Monday, the 22nd of July, 2024. 2024. You know what I mean? Middle of the summer. All right, I'm gonna move. I gotta move this up here. There we go. Is that right? Oh my gosh, I forgot to open Discord. Hold on. While we open Discord. Oh yeah. There's another chair in the background. Is that another chair? That's another chair. The discordant background that I have going on here. With the chair in the background. Okay, there we go. Click buttons. All right. And then we got to go over to the Discord, over to the green room. We shall join the green room. I had forgotten to join the green room. There we go. Okay. Discord, green room, engaged. All right. Watching Russian cabbies and frightening the Navy. I'm confused by that. I'm confused by that statement. Now, I would watch Russian cabbies, but I don't think it's a good idea to. I don't think it's a good idea to frighten the Navy. If you go out there and you start touching them boats, the next thing you know, hellfire rains from the sky. Those Navy boys don't like it when you touch their boats. You get up there and you, I'm touching your boat. They get mad. I'm supposed to be accounting the polls in Sydney, Australia. Supposed to be accounting the polls? Okay, now I'm confused. How do you be accounting the polls? Which polls? What poll? What? Okay. Just keep typing stuff out. Eventually I'll figure out what you're saying. Eventually I'll get there. I'll get there. I'll eventually understand the words coming from down under. Frank Dominguez today on the 22nd of July, first to the chat, straight from the attic. From the attic to the chat. Thanks to me for gifting 5 memberships today. I gifted 5 memberships out today to all 5 very worthy membership gift recipients. Aubrey, Shelby Ray, Linda Worth, Michael Myers. It's always good to have Michael Myers be in your membership squad fam team, whatever you call them. Andy Rampage. Actually, I don't know who Andy Rampage is. But it's always good to have Michael Myers on your team. Regardless of what year they were born, 1987. Still got some youthful vigor about you, but a little bit of wisdom. So maybe that's worthwhile. Witchy Cat's here. Skoggs is here. Says, wish I could add to the cause. Things be tight right now. Understandable from your further commenting on having to buy a new phone, which is why I myself still have an old phone. I will use that thing until it breaks. Now, the pen, it has like a stylus pen. The stylus pen does not, for whatever reason, connect properly anymore. So that part is breaking, although the pen works when I take it out and I write on stuff. So I don't know. But the phone still works. The screen is not cracked. Knock on wood. And so I'm still using an old phone. For that very reason right there, as you said, it was a month's worth of savings gone right there just to replace a phone. Yeah, the phone prices have gotten completely out of control. The one thing that I've been able to figure out with the phone price thing, and I don't know, there might be a better way to go about this, but what I've done in the past was to go find refurbished unlocked phones on Amazon, and I've had pretty good results with that. Like I said before, there's probably a better way of doing it. If somebody has a better way of doing it, I'd like to know. Inquiring minds would like to know. People would like to know if there's a more effective way of buying a phone, but I normally find the refurbished open box, basically unlocked phone, and then just hook it up to my service. But I don't know. Maybe there's horror stories around that you want to talk about. I don't know. But I've had pretty good results so far going that route. But it has occurred to me that at some point I'm probably going to have to get a new phone, and it's on the horizon, but I'm still holding out. I'm holding out with my trusty old phone here. And so far we've survived. I'm able to make phone calls, text, meme with people, do the memes, get the strong memes out there, so yeah, we can do all those things. Amazon is recommending me to buy this. Amazon just said, hey, we think you might want to buy this. It's like the story of my life. I don't know what you guys get in your recommended feed, but I get the Klein Tools cable bender, the 14-incher, made in the United States. That's what comes up in my Amazon feed as to, like, what do you need? Check this out. We found a cable bender for you. Are you happy with our recommendation? No bits and bobs, nothing fancy, nothing like that. Just cable bender. Like, Amazon's like, bitch, get back to work. And I'm like, okay, I guess. I even worked over the weekend. Does that count, Amazon? Is that good enough for you? No. Oh. So had a project to finish this last week, and it turned into a doozy. Turned into a doozy of a project. Not only was it, 93 degrees out most of the days, and for all you international weirdos, I better convert that to Celsius so you understand. Uh, 34 Celsius. I don't know. Is 34 Celsius warm to you guys, you international folks? I don't know. Those of you on the metric system. Oh, I don't need this. We can close that. We don't need that. What are all these windows open? I got lots of windows open right now. I'm going to close them. Because what better time than now? Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so it was like 93 degrees out. It was sunny. It was hot. I drank about 1,000 bottles of water every day. No joke. I went through 2 flats of water in 3 days, I think. And it's like it's really hot and you're really sweating when you drink tons and tons of water, and then you only go pee like once. You're like, oh, all this water's getting out of my body, but it's coming out through the skin. It's coming out through the skin, And you're like, okay. I'm still alive. I'm not dead. Cool. I had to build I posted a progress picture on the Patreon page. If you haven't been over to Patreon and you want to become a patron, it would be cool. I thought we had a new patron this weekend. That's the Patreon page right there. If you want to click on it, you can go over there and you can look at progress pictures of Big Deck. And then we put a pergola on top of it, a big pergola on top of it. Actually, if you guys are watching the stream, I'll just show you. Why not? Boom. There you go. Building the deck, which this deck had to keep going through a whole bunch of different iterations of what they wanted. Kept changing, which is fine. Nobody's upset with that. But yeah. So we completed that project. I worked over the weekend to catch up on some other projects, but it was very busy, and I spent a lot more time out there working than sort of expected. But it is what it is. Enjoyable people to work for. Lovely customers, and nothing wrong with that. But it's good to get that project done. It's off my list now, and we just keep moving on all the other projects ongoing. Yeah. Nick's Fish Room said that's effing hot. Yeah, it's hot enough. It's hot enough. I mean, I know there's going to be some dipshit from Arizona or whatever that's going to come on here and be like, it's 128 degrees in my basement, And I'll be like, I don't know. But it's hot enough being out in full exposure sun, and then, just kind of sweating to the oldies out there, working hard, lumbering and cutting and putting things together. But I'm happy to say that was done. Skog Shrimp and Stuff says, I saw in Dubai the other day, felt like 58 Celsius or something. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, I would never live in Dubai. I will tell you that. That's ridiculous. I don't even know what 58 Celsius is. 120 degrees or something? 58 Celsius to Fahrenheit. 136. Did it feel like 136, or was it actually that hot? Dubai. $58 degrees Celsius. 58 degrees. Abu Dhabi recorded 61 degrees Celsius. Oh, that's the real field temperature. Okay, so it didn't actually... UAE is currently experiencing unusually high humidity levels. The real field temperature in Dubai is now 58 degrees Celsius. Oh, 58 degrees. It says it feels 58 degrees Celsius, but we're not sure. So that's the heat index. That's not the actual temperature. Okay, so it was 109.4. Okay. So it was 109.4. 109.4 was the temperature, but it felt like 136 or 143. Okay. Either way, not good. I'm gonna tell you something. When it's 110 degrees out, you can't really get anything done. Ain't nothing getting done when it's that hot out. I'll tell you that much. I've been to quite a few places that are that regularly reach 110 degrees, and when it's 110 degrees out, you sort of, chill out under a sprinkler or a fan or something. There ain't much you can do. You get under a tree and you just lay down. Hope you don't get bit by a rattlesnake. You know what I mean? Because you're just laying around on the ground like a meat snake. Oh my God, we got a $10 super chat from Witchy Cat. Says money has arrived. Talk hard, like just talk hard. Like was that Christian Slater? Was that Christian Slater? What was that movie? Oh, Pump Up the Volume, right? Isn't that right? Am I right? Yeah, here it is. What can I get the other image? Why can't I get that image? There we go. Hold on, folks. I got it for you right here. Christian Slater in Pump Up the Volume. Christian Slater in Pump Up the Volume. Oh, yeah. He was so good looking. Talk hard and steal the air. I don't know if you guys remember this movie, but Christian Slater had a pirate radio station. He was like a teenager, but he was like the weirdly, like, in the 80s, they always had people that were like, he's a teenager, but he's clearly like 28. You know? How old is Christian Slater? Let's see. Oh, we're on images. We don't want images. How old is Christian Slater? So he was born in 1969, and that movie came out in 1990. So he was only 21. So he was 21. He wasn't 25. He was 21. His daughter is the same age, basically. Is there like a regular picture of this person? What? I don't know if there's a regular picture of this person. But it said that his daughter was 22, so I was going to get a picture of her, but I don't understand what is happening with the internet right now in attempting to find a picture of his daughter, because apparently he has 3 kids and a girlfriend who is the age of his daughter. So I don't know. Insanity, I'm telling you. Yeah, the humidity was way up. No one knows. They all stayed inside with the AC on. Yeah, I would imagine that most things in Dubai, pretty much everybody just stays inside all the time. I would expect there's not a whole lot of outdoor stuff during the summer going on in Dubai. Julie CJ says, "Show us the tank behind you." I am. There it is, right there. You can see it. It is behind me. There's a fish swimming in it. Can you see that? Zipgun says, humidity is no joke. I love it when people scoff at how hot it is in Florida, saying it is hotter where they are from when they hit the wall of water that is Florida humidities. You get the humidities down there, and it's out of control. I'm telling you. Yeah, I don't. Here's the issue. Like, and I've always had this problem. Is that, like, you'll tell somebody it's hot out or whatever, and then people will come back with the, like, that's not hot. I've been to the surface of the sun, and it's 100,000 billion degrees on the surface of the sun. What is the surface of the sun? Temperature, 10,000 degrees. Okay, it wasn't 100,000. It was 10,000 degrees or 5,500 Celsius. But to the reality of the statement that I'm trying to make here is that, like, if you say it's cold out, somebody will tell you about North Dakota, right? Somebody will tell you about North Dakota in the middle of the winter or something and be like, it was 1,000 million degrees below zero. The wind was 1 billion miles an hour, and my eyeballs turned into ice cubes, and then I died. You know, it's the same thing with the hot. You know, it's certainly all relative for sure. But I will say, when it gets over 85 degrees outside and it's full sun and you're working outside, when you're working outside, it's hot, period. You know, I mean, you're working hard doing labor, you know, building things with your hands and carrying lumber around and sawing things and drilling things together and whatnot. It's hot out. It just is hot. So you sweat like a maniac. Your clothes get all wet and it's gross, and you're hot on top of it. So yeah. I'm sorry, laughing here. I can't help remember being forced by a friend to listen to Kiss music all my youth. Hot, hot, hotter than hell. You know she's gonna leave you when "You Well Done" comes to mind. Yeah, I don't know. I can get why you're laughing. Kiss is a very it's a comedy band. It is. Speaking of comedy bands, apparently Tenacious D has broken up over a comment that Kyle Gass made about the attempted assassination on former President Trump, which sounded like a really offhand comment on stage. And once again, the conservative cancel culture strikes once again and takes out Tenacious D. So, for now, apparently no Tenacious D for the underside, the undercarriage of the planet. They were apparently in Australia and New Zealand and whatnot. And so apparently Tenacious D has broken up. Yeah. So that's ridiculous. And it really sucks, you know. But I honestly feel like Tenacious D like already had their heyday, and it was very weird that they were even like touring, and definitely people were going to go see them. So I felt like it was weird. I don't know that they've written very many songs past, you know, the initial album that had Dave Grohl on it that really affected me in any way. But yeah, I feel like it kind of sucks that people wanted to go see him and they were performing and now they don't get to go see him. But, you know, and I've always had this debate with people that they're like, the lefties are canceling everybody. The lefties are canceling everybody. And I'm like, this is not an invention of people on the left. People on the left, like the Southern Poverty Law Center, have been fighting for freedom of speech for the past 80 years, and leftists have been fighting that whole time side by side to maintain freedom of speech. And yet, who's been censoring in those last 80 years, right? The last 80 years has basically been conservatives censoring everything, you know. Trump is popular here. French love him. Dude, the French just elected a left coalition to keep Le Pen out of power. And you're trying to tell me that Trump is popular there? I understand there probably are like Trump fans. Like there are Trump fans in the U.S. and they're loud. They're braggadocious. They waste their money on bumper stickers, T-shirts, hats, flags, just more shit that will fill up our landfill with more garbage, right? Because this is not going to be a lasting cult. You know, people will probably be ironically wearing old, worn-out Trump T-shirts, you know, 25 years from now. They'll probably come back into fashion, just like old, like REO Speedwagon shirts are are fashionable, or like old NASCAR shirts. It was very interesting when I was in Barcelona recently. Sorry, Barcelona. We were in España recently. I saw a lot of old NASCAR gear, which I thought was really interesting. Was really interesting. Hold on, I need to make sure I don't have any cookies selected here. Reject all cookies. Yeah, either way. I don't. RN won the biggest seats, but Melancon playing fraud. We don't dare express ourselves, or they tell us we are racists. I could say, like, when I was in Europe, I actually met a lot of people that were extraordinarily racist. And I would say that, like, if there was an origin of where racism came from, I would say it's probably Europeans. Right? Like modern day racism, you know. Either way, I would say it's honestly probably where it came from. And I think it has a lot. I think it has a lot to do with the geography of Europe and how Europeans have been fighting each other forever in very close proximity. Your countries are often smaller in population and size than states are in the United States. The entire EU, when the UK was still in, was when the UK was in, has a population equal to the United States, and geographically is as big as the United States, as long as you don't include Alaska. And I think like the 2,000 years of fighting each other, and somehow imagining like big differences between Belgium, Netherlands, France, Germany, Hungary, like all these areas that are really close to each other. Let's go look on the map and see how close everything is together. You got the Portuguese and Spain. They're literally attached to each other, and the Spanish people in Spain don't even want to be one country, right? If you're Catalan, you think you should be your own country. So Spain's not even united. Portugal's a break-off state. Italy's really quite small. Hungary, Austria, Czech Republic, Poland, Germany, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, France, the UK, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, all of these small countries, all right near each other, and everybody imagining that they're not, they're all different because you live over on the other line, the other side of an imaginary line that somebody put on the ground, and I think that's where a lot of like current modern day racism sort of exists. Obviously, there are clearly racists in Asia. There are clearly racists in Africa. There are clearly racists all over the world. But I would say the current modern day sort of one-drop policies that the weird racists have and all that kind of stuff has a lot to do with the Europeans just fighting each other forever. Witness Protection says the Kamala Harris nomination blindsided me. Didn't blindside me. I've been talking about it for about 2 months now, I think. I don't know. We'd have to go back and roll back the tapes. I think realistically, if we want to talk about it, Joe Biden initially was supposed to be a one-term president. So when Joe Biden got elected, my thoughts were immediately on to like, okay, who are they going to bring up? Who are they going to promote? Who are they going to primary to bring up to replace Joe Biden? And of course I had a lot of thoughts on, there are a lot of governors, there are a lot of mayors, but there aren't a lot of sort of powerful political figures in American politics that are sort of my age, the 40 demographic, 40 between 40 and 50 years old. I'm in the middle there, right? There isn't a lot of very popular political candidates that are in that age range, and a lot of it has to do with the timeline in the U.S. with the political power that has sort of existed here. And it has a lot to do with the Democratic conventions and who they were trying to promote over the years, and they've continued to promote the same candidates over and over and over again, which is why we have these extraordinarily old people like Pelosi, like Biden, like Mitch McConnell, like Donald Trump. These people are extremely old. They're extremely old by the standard that we even set here in the United States, that retirement age is supposed to be between 62 and 65. That is our standard. You start collecting Social Security, right? You start collecting Social Security, you're supposed to be retired. Get out the way. Your work should be done. You should be going to do something else. Not to say that people that are longer in years don't have a lot of wisdom to pass on, but they shouldn't necessarily be in a position of trying to work, 15, 20 hours a day on very important and in very important positions, because frankly, that older age will allow you to make some spicy decisions because you're probably tired from working these extraordinarily long hours. I can say, when I'm working those extremely long hours, we end up making bad decisions. Same reason why truckers can't drive 24 hours a day. They have to take breaks to sleep and get rest and not be actively driving, right? So that's basically the reason behind that. But, so my thoughts have been pretty much, around the who do you think they're going to promote? Who do you think they're going to try and bring up? And Biden was slowly but surely making it pretty apparent that he didn't want to step down. He wanted to do another term. It has been my opinion this whole time that Biden has been trying to run as he's been basically run a presidency that is very, very similar to FDR. Franklin Delano. Is Delano his middle name? I think Delano's his middle name. Roosevelt. FDR, name full. What was his middle name? Delano. I was right. I think that's what Biden was trying to emulate. I think that's what he was trying to do, was be like FDR as much as possible. There was all the talk about the Green New Deal, blah, blah, blah. The Green New Deal never even got out of committee. It never went to the House, never went to the Senate. It never became law. But factually, Joe Biden did pass a monumental amount of legislation in the first term that he was there, and I think a lot of it that will be extraordinarily beneficial for the United States population for a very long time. A lot of infrastructure will get done. A lot of investment in American manufacturing will get done, as has already been highlighted in areas like Arizona, where TSMC, the chip manufacturing company, is building a $40 billion manufacturing facility in Arizona. So that's just one example. I can't go through all of them because first off, I don't have them all memorized. Second off, I don't want to sit here for 12 hours naming off a bunch of shit that happened in the last 4 years. But it's been pretty clear to me that what he's been trying to do is essentially try to be the next FDR and then die in office. I think that's pretty much what he's been trying to do. That's what FDR did. FDR is the guy who brought us term limits for presidents. If you guys aren't familiar, he was elected 4 times. The fourth time he was elected, I believe he only lasted 3 months or something like that, and then died in office. I forget how long he was in office when he died. I think it was not a long time. Let's see, when did he die? We can figure this out. Died April 12th. Yeah, about 3 months. You know, he's about 3 months into his 4th term as president. Died in office. And I'm completely spacing on who took over for him. Who was FDR's... vice president? Who was his vice president when... Who took over for him? Was it Truman? I think it was Truman. Truman. Yeah, I think Truman took over for him. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was Truman. Harris Truman. Yeah. So he took over, and I think my reason for bringing that up was that I think that's what Biden's interpretation of his personal life. I think that's what he was trying to do. I think that's essentially what he was trying to do. So. Yeah, I think his idea was, well, I'll just try to I'll run and get elected again, and then I'll just kick the bucket in office, and boom, Kamala Harris will take over. She'll be vice president, then she'll become president. But the problem is that, like, if he's to die right now, Mike Jones becomes, or Mike Johnson, not Mike Jones. Well, Mike Jones! Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, would take over as vice president, which that guy is out of his mind. So Joe Biden will stay in office, I think, regardless of what happens, even if it turns into a weekend at Bernie's thing, until the election is final. And you know, over the past 6 months or 9 months or whatever, it's been pretty obvious that somebody is going to have to take the reins of that administration, and it looks like Kamala Harris is probably going to be the presidential candidate because she can take over with the existing funds and the campaign and everything because she's already a part of the campaign. They don't need to They don't need to switch. And I know that there are some people out there that are claiming that there's a legal side of this. Guys, this has all been handled before. The legal precedent is already there that the de facto president who would have been running is going to step down. So in the chain of command, the next person steps up. I mean, it's definitely not rocket science. I am all for it. I'm 100% all for a Kamala Harris administration, which it would essentially be the same administration they have now moving forward. And so I think this is all for the benefit. And it's pretty exciting to see them fundraise $50 million in the first night. That it seems like Kamala is going to be taking over. So it seems like a lot of people are on board. There's a lot of enthusiasm. And as I've mentioned on this stream like a bunch of times, it's not even really about the bases on either side. It's about getting the 80 million people that didn't even bother to vote last time to just go vote. I don't care who you vote for, whether it's Elmo, whether it's FDR, or if it's Trump, or if it's Kamala Harris. You just have to go vote, dude. We've talked about it before. Australia has forces people to go vote. It's a very light force, but everybody's registered to vote. You got to go vote. It's compulsory. There was that one guy who decided that he was not going to be forced into voting, and I believe he had to go and spend a night in jail. So, Australian man refuses to vote. This was a while ago. It was a few years back. Yeah, this guy, Callum Clayton Dixon. Isn't that the guy? Get all nasally and weird. I think he eventually had to do a night in jail. I'm not sure. Yeah, this guy was he was advocating for not voting, which is the whole thing of how weird is it to really not, to be to the point where it's you want to get into this legal battle to not vote when you could just vote, when you could just do it. Oh, this is the guy. Yeah, this guy was fined $100. Yeah, this was the dude. Ben Buckley, convicted and fined for refusing to vote in the federal election. He was fined $100 and ordered to pay $79.50 in costs. And I think this guy took it all the way to the court, forcing him to spend a night in jail. Obviously, there's a few more stories. But you should familiarize yourself with it. But compulsory voting, in my opinion, is probably the best option, and I would love to see that in the U.S., where people would be forced to vote. And if you didn't vote, you'd lose tax exemptions. I believe that should be the punishment. Racism has always been around all over the world. Xenophobia is a primitive trait. If you don't know something foreign, avoid it. The modern view on racism dates from the end of the 19th century. It was widespread amongst all European countries and its colonies. So also the U.S. and Australia. Like I said, racism is a global phenomenon that can be traced back throughout history. Arguably, you're not wrong. We could obviously have a long debate, but I don't think that you're wrong. But I also don't think that modern day people take ancient phenomenon into their modern day views as to what it is that they're up to, right? I don't think that, highly racist people are thinking like, yeah, back when they used to hunt mastodon, right? Like, I don't think that's the thought process. I don't think that's the thought process behind it. So while it is important to like understand historically and or understand history and understand like, how we got to the point where we're at now, or things that happened in the year 1300, for instance, I don't think that like I don't think that most modern day people aren't going through their day thinking that like, oh hey, what did somebody I've never met before, 1,000 years ago, what did they do? And I'm going to make my decision based on that. I don't think that that's how people are relating to it. Tried being a lands father, as we say here, doing what he believed was good for modern politics and the next generation, kind of. Who's that? Michael Jordan? Oh, no, I'm confused. I'm confused by the chat. I tried to prank call their hotels when the internet crashed. Whose hotels? Lobbying gotta go. It's just legal bribery. Yeah, and I mean, I understand that, like, lobbying is causing a lot of problems in politics. The bigger problem is that, and this is the way that, like, an educated Supreme Court would look at it, is that they go, how do we protect the individual's rights? Right? And that's realistically like how they boiled it down. Like, if you read a lot of the boilerplate, like all of the write-ups from Citizens United, is that in order to maintain the individual rights, they're unfortunately going to have to allow corporations to have rights also. That is essentially the way that it boiled down to, right? Is that in order to maintain individual people's ability to interact, lobby, do these things, protect their freedom of speech, it's unfortunately going to allow big corporations to have freedom of speech. Whereas the corporations and lobbyists should be regulated in how they can interact, specifically how they can allocate funds, how they can donate funds. The big problem is that, like, the Supreme Court, when they were arguing Citizens United, the lawyers that worked on that were incredibly intelligent, well thought out, and proposed some of the strongest legal shit I've ever seen before. And one of the easiest ways to explain it would be, let's say that me, Corvus Oscen YouTube channel, right? Let's say I make a documentary about how Donald Trump sucks. And it's a half an hour video, and I go through all this stuff, and I highlight my case, I make a video about it, and I post it up on YouTube during an election cycle, right? Technically, I'm lobbying against Donald Trump, right? Technically, I have made content, I'm making money off of content, blah, 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 lobbying against a political candidate. The government can't restrict my ability to put that out because it might influence an election, right, is how Citizens United was essentially argued, was individuals have a right to speak out. So if we enforce that, we can't enforce a general doctrine that limits the speech just because this company has $100 million and this person has $1,000, right, to make this content, right? Now, a good example of regulation would be that, like, super PACs are these big lobbying groups of money. They can't have any contact with a political candidate's team, essentially. Like the group of people that are running the candidate can't have direct contact with a super PAC. Otherwise, that will be considered a crime, right? That's the regulation behind, hey, these people have money and they're trying to put their money into this. They can still have money and they can still do things, but there are certain things that they can't do, like behind the scenes, which is ultimately how I believe that, like, lobbyists need to be regulated in order to understand what they're doing is legal or illegal, right? So, yeah. Zipgun says the no contact condition is a joke and easily avoided. Yeah, I mean, you saw Donald Trump was convicted of 34 counts of campaign finance law, right? Like, yes, you can avoid it, but once it's found out, you have a documented case. Now you have a case that you can prosecute, right? So that's why I'm saying, like, maybe people are cheating. Maybe people are speeding on the freeway. It is illegal, and you sometimes get caught, and you get a speeding ticket. Your insurance goes up, blah, blah, blah. Like, there is a result, although some people are getting away with it. Yeah, which is why I would argue that we should have more robust regulatory bodies in order to not only investigate, but investigate and enforce the stuff that's going on. So, like, for instance, you know, it's like, should lobbyists be able to be on the floor of the House or the Senate? Probably not. Should they be allowed to be in the offices of a senator or a House, a speaker, or a representative from the House? Probably. Should there be some other person there to oversee what's going on? Should they maybe have body cams when they're doing business? Right? Like, we expect police officers to have body cams. Should we maybe have body cams for representatives so that they can be on record? You know, I'm saying that, like, we should require more oversight to what is going on and more accountability to what is going on, as opposed to just saying, oh, if anyone else is seen having what is considered to be an activity that is considered freedom of speech to be restricted instead of having that, I think that there should be oversight. Because, like, if I do make that documentary, somebody could come look at it, right? Like, let's say if I made a documentary that was defaming former President Trump, he has an opportunity in court to say, like, hey, this is defamation, right? And could potentially bring up a lawsuit. Like, oh, that thing, you defamed my character, you blah, blah, blah. You know, like, there are mechanisms that somebody that's making something publicly, you can, you know, potentially get them in trouble with the law, or in a civil action, get a ruling in your favor that could potentially lead to, you know, people like Alex Jones owing $1.7 billion to the people of Sandy Hook that he defamed, right? Which I think it's $1.7 billion. I'm not sure. Let's look it up. Alex Jones owes how much to Sandy Hook? What would we call them? Victims? Sandy Hook families who won a $1.5 billion settlement. Sorry, it was not 1.7, it was 1.5. So while that does take time, and it took a lot of time in order for that to come to fruition, like there is a mechanism in place to like oversee stuff like that, right? You said vice president taking over if Biden passes will be a guy named Michael. So I immediately heard Michael Jordan in my screwed up head. Well, I don't know if anybody would want Michael Jordan to just jump into politics. He seems to be a wonderful basketball player, but I don't know how well he would do politically. I don't know. I think I said Mike Jones, and it's not Mike Jones. It's Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, is the next person in line to ascend if something tragic were to happen to the president. Of which I am not advocating for at all. I think it's horrific that anybody would take anything into their hands like that. What's his name? Gabby Giffords, or not his name. Gabby Gifford's husband is potentially going to pick Mark Kelly as a vice president, and so I was looking this up earlier. I was trying to remember who Mark Kelly was. I was like, oh yeah, he was the astronaut guy. He's run a few campaigns in Arizona recently, and then I remembered like there was something about Mark Kelly that I was trying to remember, and here's what's strange. So Mark Kelly is currently either the representative or the senator in Arizona, and it brought up this story right here that I had completely forgot about. I had completely forgotten about this story right here, where Mark Kelly's wife used to be a representative in Arizona. And on January 8th, 2011, U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords and 18 other people were shot during a constituent meeting held in the supermarket parking lot in Casa Adobes, Arizona, in the Tucson metropolitan area. 6 people were killed, including Federal District Court Chief Judge John Roll, Gabe Zimmerman, one of Gifford's staffers, and a 9-year-old girl, Christina Taylor Green. Giffords was holding a meeting called Congress on Your Corner in the parking lot of a Safeway store when Jared Lee Lohner drew a pistol and shot her in the head before proceeding to fire on other people. One additional person was injured in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. News reports identified the target of the attack to be on Giffords, a Democrat representing Arizona's 8th Congressional District. She was shot through the head at point-blank range, and her medical condition was initially described as critical. Lohner was a right-wing weirdo and claimed in court that he had paranoid schizophrenia, which he was later found to be competent. He ended up pleading guilty to 19 counts and went to jail forever and will not get out. Here's what's even crazier. Mark Kelly's wife, who was shot in the head, survived and is still alive to this day and is currently an advocate for gun safety and gun control. She's still alive. This lady right here. Oh, I wonder if I can do this. I wonder if this works. I'm gonna try this out. Oh, that doesn't work. I assumed that this would work, but it doesn't. Okay, hold on. There's got to be a faster way to do this. So she still survives. There she is. Modern day. Mark Kelly's wife has survived. She's apparently on X. She has a book out called Gabby's Story. Gabby Gifford's. Oh, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to donate or can I close that? Gabrielle Giffords understands what it's like to face overwhelming barriers. Life dedicated to public service. She has a book out and advocates for gun safety. And Mark Kelly now has he's a senator, right? And of course we get a pop up where we got to subscribe and buy in or whatever. Yeah, so they're thinking that he might be one of the potential candidates for vice president, which now I'm pretty, I feel like, I think like one of the biggest things that somebody mentioned to me about, Kamala Harris being the nominee is that, and the thing that kind of stuck with me that somebody else said this, I'm not even laying claim to it, but somebody else told me this, is that you go, okay, let's say you're the Democratic Party and Biden decides to step down and Biden is like, all right, fine, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to step down. And they go, okay, well, who do we need to run? Who do we want to run for president? And you have somebody who's black and Indian, Asia Indian, by the way, from India, of black and Indian descent, is a woman and is very qualified, and you somehow decide, nah, we're going to pick somebody else, right? That I don't think that looks good for anybody. I don't think that looks good for anybody. While Kamala Harris is not the perfect candidate, I don't believe that there is a perfect candidate, first off. I don't believe that there is a perfect candidate out there. I don't think that exists. And while somebody who might be a perfect candidate for me is going to be imperfect for a whole lot of other people. So I don't believe that there is a perfect candidate. I feel like Kamala Harris is not only the most qualified, but in the best position to run and continue moving forward in a positive way, for sure. A fish thing. I got an aquarium glazer newsletter yesterday. A tetra I never seen is about to arrive from a local breeder of theirs. Check Incapathes. Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to say that. Let's look it up. Search Google. Impychthes? I don't even know how to say that. Do we have any? Oh, aquarium glazer. Here we go. Holy shit. Okay. Look at this. Look at this. Oh my God. Look at these bad mama jammas right here. Ooh. Okay. Hell yeah, dude. I'm in. I want some. I don't know how to say it. I don't have a clue how to say it. Let's see if we can figure out how to say it. See if we can't find the pronunciation. Oh my god, there isn't even any pronunciation. They're that new. No one even knows how to pronounce them yet. But these are beautiful. I wonder tank conditions or tank parameters, that kind of stuff. They are peaceful and lively fish that have proven to be easy to keep. When fully grown, these animals measure around 4 centimeters in total length, so 2 inches, and are therefore about the same size as other king tetra species, although this species is somewhat more upright. Oh. We suggest the trade name purple-striped king tetra because of the royal purple coloration on the longitudinal bands. Photos by Peter and Martin Hoffman. All right. Yeah. All right. I mean, I'm in. I mean, if they look this top picture right here, right? Like this almost feels real. This one, the second picture, feels photoshopped a little bit. This looks pretty real. This looks like added saturation and a few other things. But even if they look like this top picture here, just kind of blown out, not insanely deep colored or anything like that, that's a really cool fish. That's a really cool fish. Yeah. Mickham, I can see why you're excited. I'm excited too. Those are pretty cool. I don't know if I'll ever see those in the States. Maybe it's a reason to come to Europe and hand import some back myself. I don't know. But I don't know if I could afford that, you know? I don't know if I could afford that. So that's definitely the problem. Von Lurker, isn't that the reason there is a vice president to replace the president when needed? Yes, that's the whole mechanism. Yeah, that's the mechanism in place, you know. The current situation that we have right now is like if Biden just quit today and completely resigned, you would have Kamala Harris move up to the presidency, and then Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, would move up to vice president. The order of succession for the U.S. government's presidential office is outlined in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 6, as well as in the 12th, 20th, and 25th Amendments. The vice president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the vice president becomes... If the president dies, resigns, or is removed from office, the vice president becomes president for the remainder of the term. Speaker of the House, if the vice presidency is also vacant, the Speaker of the House of Representatives becomes president. So if you're the Speaker of the House, you move up to vice president if the president goes away. If the president and vice president go away, the Speaker of the House moves up. President pro tempore of the Senate, which is confusing, but it basically means whoever has been in the Senate the longest is the president pro tempore. So if you've been a senator for like 40 years, you're the president pro tempore of the Senate. Yeah. If both the vice president and speakership are vacant, the president pro tempore of the Senate becomes president. So the longest termed senator will move up. Cabinet secretaries then follow in order of succession, depending on eligibility and the order in which their agencies were created. The Secretary of the State is fourth in line after the Vice President, Speaker of the House, and President pro tempore of the Senate. So it's all laid out. Like the order of succession is all laid out in the Constitution and the amendments. So, yeah, that's the weird thing. I don't think a lot of people even recall the order. You know, they think that like the Speaker of the Senate, right, is going to move up, but it's not. It's the House, and then it's the guy who's been the Senate the longest, and then it's the Secretary of the State. It's all goofaroony, right? Yeah. They will not be cheap, that I know. Yeah, those are really cool Tetras. I have to admit, those are amazing, and they probably will not be cheap. From having toured Aquarium Glazer quite a while ago, I don't remember how many years ago. 6 years ago? 7 years ago? I don't know. From having toured that facility, amazing facility for sure, 100%. A lot of very cool people working there, a lot of cool people taking care of fish, and definitely a cool place, and would love to go back someday. Don't know if that'll ever happen, but I would love to go back someday. And but I do not recall anything there being thrifty, as it were. I wouldn't say anything that was there was like, that's affordable, you know? And especially the standout items that were at Aquarium Glazer were definitely not cheap. So, yeah. Eat. Let's see. What have I not talked about that was in chat? Nobody called in today. No callers today. The vice president, after becoming president, will nominate a new vice president. Yes, but that is after the Speaker of the House becomes vice president. That is a procedural thing that will happen later. Because currently the understanding is that the Speaker of the House is already qualified and approved because they've already been through a vote to become Speaker of the House, right? So we all get that? We all understand that? The succession does not have a delay, right? There's no delay to the succession. Whereas picking a new vice president by being nominated and then having to be voted in by Congress, there's a big delay there. And nobody likes delay for really anything, except for ladies would request some guys to delay, you know, finishing, as it were, sometimes. But nobody really likes delay when it comes to keeping the government moving, right? So that's immediate. If something happens, like say the vice president gets in a car crash or something, yeah, you know, and they unfortunately died, it's immediate. And then the president will start to go through a process of nominating a new vice president. And then they got to be approved. And it will normally be like, normally like the options would be, oh, they're going to pick the Secretary of State. Oh, they're going to pick one of the cabinet members, you know, Pete Buttigieg or something, right? I find a lot of countries only having two options often get stuck in ravine type of practice when winning, and perhaps not always benefiting the people. We have 7 to 9 parties co-working in 2 blocks. You know, a lot of people complain about the United States having a 2-party system. Our 2-party system sort of works the same way. There are There are two parties, but there are groups within our two parties. They don't identify themselves as adamantly as in other countries, where you'd be like, "Oh, I'm a Green Party member, and our group is going to vote with these other groups." Most often, they coalesce as two parties, even though there is every opinion, top to bottom, that you could think of in each party, and they sort of form little groups of, hey, I know this guy, I know that guy, I work with this person, I work with that person all the time, and we're all kind of working together to try and get our party to go a certain direction. And you can see like how skewed the Republican Party is recently. From they have 11 members who just refuse to vote on stuff, and it just completely stops their party from doing anything. So we have the same thing here. It's just not as identifiable as it is in other countries. Oh my God, we have a caller. It sounds like they're out baling hay today. What are you doing?
Is it that loud? I'm sorry. I'm sitting in a quiet car.
Sweet mother of pearl, I had my speakers turned up loud. Must have been rocking out. Okay.
Not my fault. Hi.
Well, what's up, Witchy Cat? What are you doing? You're a big donator of the day and calling in.
I am all things.
Oh, did
I'm
I turn
excited.
It down too far? I did.
Did you?
I did. I turned it down. I muted you on my end. So people heard what you said, just not me.
Okay.
Yeah, so what's going on, dude? What are you doing? What up? Are you excited about Kamala Harris? Oh my God.
Excited about Kamala Harris.
Kamala.
And excited about the number of people it seems to bring out of the woodwork when you talk about her.
It seems to be the case. People are riled up.
They're all up in arms, I say. No, today is our first big smoke day of the year up here.
Oh, really?
So we had thunderstorms this morning and lots of lightning around, and so now I can't see out of my bowl. So yeah, good times.
That is weird.
Well, there's a big fire down by Wanacott Lake, which is not far enough away from me, I believe is the phrase I'm looking for. So
yeah, Wanacott's out there. Wanacott's pretty close.
Yeah, it's at the bottom of my mountain.
Yeah.
So, but we'll see. I'm not super worried yet. But anyway, so that's what's going on around here. I just came up from town looking for fire sign versus just smoke.
To see what was going on.
Yeah, well, I had to also get water and gas for the generator so that I too might start fires of my own.
Oh, good call.
Yeah, hey, good times. So, yeah, I missed most of the first half of the chat, but I am excited to talk politics, as we all know, so.
Right.
Good to know you are out there schooling folk on
I don't know that I'm
works.
I don't know that I'm schooling anybody, but
Well,
our live stream turnout is down. We're not getting the viewers. We're not getting the clicks. So I don't know what I got to do.
Well,
not a lot of people today. I'm guessing that a lot of the conservatives are super depressed. They're all crying in their I don't know.
Beer.
Yeah, wherever it is. And all of their leftover Let's Go Brandon gear.
Oh, well, at least they have, things to donate to the homeless.
I wonder if they're gonna take down the giant "fuck Joe Biden" signs and flags that are around here. I wonder if they're gonna take them down.
Here. If they do, I can almost guarantee you that they'll just send them over here for people to put up, because they still have those up from 2020. They still have "fuck Obama" signs up around here. So.
Well, that's yeah.
We're a little behind the times where I live, though, so that's fair. I was wondering, because we've been so focused on Kamala if you'd seen the SCOTUS ruling about basically making homelessness illegal in, I think it was Eugene.
I did.
Oregon.
They upheld Eugene, Oregon's law that they had there as constitutional somehow. It's fucking insane. But I think that like the people in Eugene essentially wrote a law that they couldn't find error with, I think is more to the point. That like, they managed to phrase a law that it does land within constitutionality, and the lawyers that were arguing against it, I don't think could come up with something that would show a reason as to how they could strike it down, right? Because that ultimately is the hardest. That ultimately is the hardest part when people have like a really knee-jerk reaction to like what the Supreme Court is doing. Is that like, well, have you listened to the arguments, right? Right. And that's the bigger part is like, man, I don't think anybody's realistically sitting down and reading all of that shit. I've only read like, in my lifetime, I've probably read 5 or 6 cases. Like one of them is the Citizens United.
Right.
And it's been a long time, so I don't remember a ton of it. My brain works in the like, man, it's really hard for me to remember shit from 20 years ago. Like my brain just is like, fuck that. We're doing a bunch of other shit right now. We don't have time to remember that garbage. So but I did highlight this. I highlighted the Citizens United case earlier because I fully believe like the memes about it have sort of really skewed people's view on Citizens United. Yes, it did open the door to big money doing a bunch of shit, but the reason that they upheld it and ruled in that direction was to maintain the individual's right to freedom of speech. So you go like, yeah, it does suck that these corporate lobbyists and these corporate PACs and all this crazy shit exists. Like the reason that the Supreme Court upheld it is that they were like, well, the freedom of speech is a fundamental right, essentially, right? Like it's the first one, it was the first thing that they put in there, like as being the most important, and so that's why like Citizens United is pretty confusing, because it's like, yes, it opened the door to a bunch of heinous shit that I don't like. Yes. But I understand the ruling behind it to make sure that the freedom of speech was inherently protected, right? And to make sure that there were less loopholes to people's freedom of speech being restricted, and it's unfortunate. As far as the ruling on the homelessness thing, I haven't read up on this. I've only like kind of headlines and shit like that, but my understanding is that they basically wrote the law that it does somehow fall within sort of at least the interpretation that this could be constitutionally protected, right? Does that make sense?
Right. It does. I'm more interested in the subcontext that Clarence is trying to add to it, or
well, Clarence Thomas is a piece of shit. I mean, it's highlighted just all over the place, and the fact that he's not being investigated or indicted for a lot of the shit that he's up to, my opinion is that he should be wholly investigated. I believe that the whole Supreme Court should be investigated. It's insane that they are in charge of their own punishment, essentially, right? Like they oversee themselves, which makes no lick of sense. There definitely should be a ton of oversight into the Supreme Court and finding out what the fuck is going on with these 9 characters that can't be unseated, right? And it's insane, right? Like it's just totally crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that I'm excited. It's excited.
Okay.
I am about.
All right. Hold on a second. I got to respond to Zip Gun in the chat.
Okay.
So he says that only works if money equals free speech, and that is the absurd part of the ruling. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my example that I used earlier. If I make an anti-Trump video and I put it up on YouTube and you donate $5 as a super chat to my anti-Trump video, right? That's you expressing your free speech with money, right? You're supporting somebody who says, fuck Donald Trump. He's a piece of shit. He's always been a piece of shit since the 70s. You're tipping me $5 or being a patron of mine on Patreon or buying ads on my anti-Trump video, right? All of a sudden could be held up in court that like, oh, this guy's lobbying this guy is lobbying politically, right? Because I'm receiving money from having made something. That's the fundamental reason why they upheld Citizens United, because at any point in time that somebody makes some kind of content that essentially illustrates, that isn't defamatory, that is like, you know, here's blah 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 blah. Here's 10 reasons why I say this, I say that. And then somebody is like, "Oh, okay, we're what's something around here? We're the water bottle company, right? The water bottle company says I want to pay $500 for my water bottle ad to play on Joel's anti-Trump video. Now, all of a sudden, we're a political entity, right? And so Zipgun says, so rich people are an upper class that has more free speech than poor people. Rich people have more access to things that poor people do. Yes, fundamentally, 100%. Rich people have more access than poor people do, right? Like, poor people don't even have access to a house. Like, real poor people just live outside on the ground, right? I happen to live in a house. I'm not wealthy, but I have more than the person that lives outside on the ground. Yes, we can talk about, like, societal... We can talk about, like, the differences between somebody having $1 billion in the bank and somebody having $100 in the bank. Yes, but what the Citizens United was about was protecting the free speech of the poor people. And it unfortunately allows extraordinarily wealthy people to have an amplified voice, right? It does. If you're Rupert Murdoch and you own Fox News or whatever, right? He has an more amplified voice than I do, right? That doesn't mean that the federal government has a right to restrict my ability to speak or their ability to speak. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's why that was held up. That's why that went that way. Yes, I was disappointed that it went that way because it opens the door to a lot of bad things happening, which, like I said, has to come down to we need to regulate the things that we don't want to have happen, right? It's like, well, they have a Lamborghini. They can go 400 miles an hour in their Lamborghini. Yeah, but we have a speed limit set.
Right.
We have a speed limit that says if you go 400 miles an hour, we put you in jail, right? Like, if you come out and lie about somebody else, you can be sued and you can lose all your money and you can lose your house. If something is proven to be so incredibly egregious that you incited violence, for instance, right, then you could go to jail for that, right? Like, we have regulations around, like, what is going on. Now, it is my opinion that those things should be expanded. Like, for instance, oversight into the Supreme Court should be expanded. We should be overseeing what they're doing. We should know that there are a lot of Supreme Court cases that have been overseen by Supreme Court judges who have received a whole bunch of favor from the cases that they ruled on. But that's more of a regulation thing. That's not a constitutional issue, right? So I'm not here to say like Citizens United was amazing and fantastic and I love it. I don't like the outcome of certain things. Yes. But if we're talking about like the Constitution and how the Constitution was supposed to be adhered to, like, unfortunately, I'm like, yeah, they probably got that right, you know?
Right.
How do we regulate anything when the rich just buy off enough politicians with their bank accounts of free speech? We regulate them into not being able to have $40 billion in the bank, which we used to do. We used to do that through proper taxation. We used to do that through pension funds. We used to do that from, the list goes fucking on and on. I could sit here and talk about all the shit we used to do in order to stop the Rockefellers from existing, right? The Carnegies from existing. We did those things. We know how to regulate those things. We can go back to doing those. Those are regulation, right? Like if you make $100 billion this year, guess what? Everything over $400 million is taxed at 99%. We used to fucking do that, right? Or they got to take that the $398 billion or whatever the fucking number I said. They have to take that and they have to invest it back into doing something with the money. You can't just allow it to sit in offshore accounts, accruing interest off of some bullshit investment, off some like bullshit investment that's imaginary, right? Like, how do we regulate the churches being on every fucking street corner that is around? And we come to find out that there is political speech going on at church every morning. How do we regulate that? Well, guess what? You got a cell phone in your pocket and we start recording those people and you go, this church, this date, this is what happened. These people need to lose their tax-free status, right? Like, that's how these things will continue to go. Yes, the people people at church are free to speak about whatever they want. They lose their tax advantages, right? That is that's a regulation process, right? That isn't the government saying you can't say that. The government says if you're saying that, then this. You don't get to have tax-exempt status any longer because you're outside the realm of your religious freedom, right? So that's why I'm saying like these things need to be regulated. And yes, rich people have access to all sorts of shit that poor people don't, you know? Like I don't know who's a famous talking head right now. I don't know. Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow has way more access. Her speech has way more access than mine does. Like, now, is that personally kind of suck? Would I like to have the audience size that Rachel Maddow does? Yeah. I would also like to have the income that Rachel Maddow has. Maybe I would be able to have a boat. I don't know. But yeah, I understand, like, wealthy people are in extraordinary positions that poor people aren't. My point isn't to suddenly go, hey, we can't allow people to have free speech anymore. My point is those rich people need to be regulated to the point where they're unable to go, oh, I'm going to buy Twitter for $44 billion, right? Then a couple years later, I'm going to force the company that, by the way, was subsidized with tax money, tax subsidies over and over and over again, to be able to force that company to give me a $56 billion salary, right? Like, that shit needs to be fucking regulated.
Right.
And if you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Elon Musk, the fucking asshole that illegally immigrated to the United States. Self-admittedly, him and his brother on video admitted they were illegally immigrated to the United States.
And
right?
Guess who won't be the first in Trump's deportation laws?
So you want, like, conservatives want to sit around and go, like, illegal immigrants coming to the country. Yeah, oh, but Elon Musk is suddenly your fucking hero?
Right.
Who illegally immigrated to the United States? Self-admittedly. He's on fucking video with him and his brother talking about it. You know, I don't know. So, yeah, my point is that, like, Citizens United was held up by it adhering to the Constitution, right? Like, that's
well,
the reasoning behind it.
Also, to your point, you know, we talk about the rich being 1%. Well, if
And I'm not talking revolution. I'm talking everybody just going out and voting.
Well, that's
Don't
what
want the
that's
rich to be in
ultimate.
charge of shit?
It's
Go
yeah.
out and vote.
That's ultimately my point, right?
Right.
You know, my point is that people need to start voting and speaking up about what they want. You know, and you know, if I talk about it in local terms, like people aren't even voting for their fucking mayor, you know, or the city council or the local judges. And not to mention how many times I get the ballot for the local judges and they run unopposed, you know.
Right.
And it's like, oh, who am I going to vote for in this judiciary position? There isn't even another candidate.
Which Republican don't I want to vote for?
Right. So.
Who is slightly less the constitutionalist sheriff? Troy?
Right. Yeah, who's slightly less insane, you know.
Right. But everybody's been fed this whole regulation is bad, too much big government, we're paying people, blah, blah, blah business. So that's where they all try to come in with it and cutting their noses off to spite their face.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's ultimately the problem. And I mean, you know, for me, that shit started in the early 80s, you know, of every corner, you know, people would be screeching about, you know, the big government's coming to get you, Big Brother, you know, Big Brother's watching, you know. And you know, like, look, I don't want to live a life that has a million different rules and a million different regulations to adhere to. The unfortunate side of that is that I have an understanding that we live with other humans, that will ultimately somebody will start doing shit that will invade on my pursuit of my life, my liberty, and my happiness, right?
Right.
It will start happening, right? If there isn't a consequence for the negative action, right? Like that's unfortunately how the world works. You know, my interpretation of being an anarchist when I was young, anarchy is not synonymous with chaos. Anarchy is essentially the idea that everyone would be able to live without oversight because it would not be necessary, right? And so while I advocated for that when I was younger, I don't think people understood the concept, right? And a lot of that boils down to people falling for fucking slogans all the time. It's very easy to fall for, you know, Nike, just do it, right? Like, oh, in the simplicity of just doing it, yes, okay, I shall buy those shoes, right? Human nature works that way. And so it's very easy for people to go, you know, Big Brother is watching, everything is bad because Big Brother is this, Big Brother that. Oh, the government's super inefficient. They waste money. They do this, blah, blah, blah. The government should be run like a business, which is all bullshit, you know. You know, and also the added expectation that like the government is supposed to do everything for you. The government isn't supposed to do everything for you. The government is supposed to provide a place where you can do whatever you want. But you know, I'm somebody that advocated for anarchy for a really long time, and the reason for that, the fundamental reason behind that, is that we would essentially want to be living in a world where people would not need somebody with a stick behind them, right, to stop them from misbehaving. But the unfortunate part is that we have thousands of years of empirical evidence that like women will be oppressed, period, end of story, by the other smaller part of the human race, the men, right? We'll have thousands and thousands of years of women essentially being indentured servants, you know, personal baby making machines, essentially, personal housekeepers, whatever, all that kind of stuff. We have thousands of years of evidence of that. So we already have a 52% being overlorded by a 48%. And if anybody wants to go look that up, go look that up. 52% of babies that are born are female, 48% are male. And so we already have thousands of years of evidence that the men will, as a whole, lord over what the other half of our species, right? So we know that. We also know that, like, there's a very small percentage of the population that will gain power, whether we're talking about the rich, whether we're talking about historically air quote white people, right? Chattel slavery, whatever you want. The list goes on and on. That we have thousands of years of evidence of that. We also have people nowadays that will go out on YouTube, motherfuckers like Charlie Kirk with their weird, abnormally sized head will go out and screech about how women should essentially stay in the kitchen forever. Men should go out and fight the world with their manliness, and be a provider and all of this crazy shit because they have a book that somebody wrote in a barn 500 years ago, right? You can't give me evidence that the Bible was written 2,000 years ago because you don't have a 2,000-year-old copy of it, right? You don't.
Right.
You have a copy from maybe 500 years ago that somebody wrote in a barn with a sheep and a goat and a fucking cow sitting on a hay bale, wrote some shit down, and tricked some people into giving them money. So we have thousands of years of that evidence. So the reality is that there probably needs to be somebody standing behind them with a big stick to stop them from doing fucked up shit, right? Like, I think that's just the reality that we're in nowadays. Aussie Aquatic says, I apologize for the insanity that a small-town rich kid from Australia has caused the USA and the UK, all for the craven pursuit of money and power. The immigrant from Australia destroyed democracy. I don't believe Rupert Murdoch is 100% responsible. We had plenty of homegrown maniacs like the actor Ronald Reagan. And I wish I had a button that I could push from Back to the Future that said, the actor, Ronald Reagan, the actor, when Doc Brown said that to Marty McFly. I wish I had a button that did that, but I don't have a button that does that because every time I try to set that up, my computer fucking smoke comes out of it. You know what I mean? I don't have that Bezos money.
Computer? Oh.
I don't have that Bezos money that allows me to have the drops. I don't have the drops. I'm sorry. I wish I had them. I've tried to put them together. But smoke. You know what I mean?
I thought you were going to say that your computer is acting against you as a conservative rather than...
Here's the problem. I wish my computer was smart enough to figure this shit out on its own because I would just be like, oh, let's go. You know? I would be like, let's do it. You know? Let's do this.
With it all day.
You know? But,
interesting.
yeah.
You were talking about FDR earlier, and I think that it's interesting that the country fought the New Deal, but then eventually rallied behind it. But that didn't actually happen after the energy crisis with Carter. It gave us Reagan and paved the way for all this deregulation and Reaganomics and other bullshit since then.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because the energy crisis and the things that we find ourselves in today, COVID, just the general recession, the climate change, doesn't directly enough affect individual lifestyles that people can see it or conceive of it. And so they feel like they're having the good life taken away from them for something that they can't touch. Does that make sense?
Right. I mean, it's a bigger concern that, like, Americans currently have an incredible availability to products, right? I think that's kind of the easiest way to explain it, is that, like, the United States as a whole is influenced to be a consumer-driven society. Like, that is where the big money is spent. You know, the big money is spent.
And democracy don't work well together.
Well, not necessarily. They do. Capitalism is great if it's regulated. And we have documented proof of that, because after World War II, we saw the greatest economic growth of any country ever, right? And guess what? Heavily taxed, extraordinarily heavily taxed, forced corporations to not give the money to the government. They invested the money into the population, whereas the deregulation and things that happened throughout the 80s it essentially forced the government to become more and more dysregulated, right? And when I say dysregulated, I mean it both ways. I mean, they were drawing red lines to regulation, and they were also discombobulated as fuck, confused, didn't really know what to do. At every turn, people were freaking out, blah, 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 right? So, and over the decades, because of that dysregulation, because of austerity measures, because of cutting taxes, austerity measure, to try and balance the budget, because people have consistently come up with the idea that a government is supposed to be run like a business, which it is not. It is supposed to be run like a service, or if you need to understand something, if you need a different example of something that is a service, it should be run like a non-profit, right? That's how it should be run. All of the money that is collected should be dumped back into the benefit of the people. That's the whole reason for it. Unfortunately, right now, it's not taking in enough money to pay for all of the services that are needed, right? So when they talk about Scandinavian countries being heavily taxed, that's because a lot of the services are provided. So when it comes down to making 65% of your paycheck, and you get to keep the 65% of your paycheck instead of giving it out to State Farm Insurance for insurance on your car, and then you turn around and give it to some bullshit healthcare company, and then you turn around and you give it to a homeowner's insurance company, and then you turn around and give it to this weird gas company who's decided to corner the market in your area and is just charging whatever the fuck they feel like. Our public utilities that were built by taxpayer dollars are currently in the hands of private companies that just decide to charge you X amount of money for electricity or natural gas or whatever fucking service you use. Over and over again, all of these things have been dysregulated and pushed into private ownership as opposed to being overseen by our government and run as a service, aka a non-profit. Okay? So the reasons why I go, capitalism can work if it is regulated properly. Yes, it can totally work, and we have a perfect example of it with the United States from 1950 to 1975. The biggest growth period that you have ever seen in your entire life, where manufacturing was happening here, right? And, you know, in the 80s, they decided to ship all that stuff overseas so that they could save money, and they could do essentially stock buybacks in the form of removing pensions from the Americans, okay? The American workers, they took the pensions away, and they forced people to buy into 401k retirement funds. Right? Those retirement funds rely on, guess what? The fucking stock market. And if you can't push the stock market up, guess what? Your retirement fund is bullshit because the companies aren't required to pay your pension anymore. So what do the companies do? The companies reinvest to make sure that the stock market goes up by playing the stock market game. Then the dipshit workers go, oh, look, my imaginary number went up. I can't take that money out because I'm only 52 years old. I can't take that out. So hopefully in 13 years, magic number still go up, right? And the company goes, hey, if you want magic number to still go up, you need to make sure that you drop more and more regulation so we can continue to do this weird magic money game that we've made up, right? That shit is on a cycle now of 40 years later, and they go, oh, and the dogs start barking. And so that's been going on for decades now, right? So, yeah, Only the Scandinavian countries seem to govern for the people they serve. Yeah, that's the thing. Pound for pound, Rupert has turbocharged propaganda, not from genuine beliefs, purely for power and money. Rupert's rise mirrors the conservative era, which cable TV channels Sky and Fox championed. Yeah, I mean, here in the United States, it started out as talk radio is essentially what happened. Those of you that are younger than me probably have no idea that radios exist. It's the thing in your car that doesn't hook up to Bluetooth. You turn it to a number on there, and then you're picking up waves that come in, not from the internet, on the radio, okay? Look up a YouTube video. Somebody else will describe it to you better. But that's where it started here in the United States. Rupert Murdoch and whatnot. Those likes, and if you want to go back, go listen to some old Rush Limbaugh and see the bullshit that they were throwing out on air onto the radio waves, that nobody was really regulating what they were saying because they didn't say the magical 7 words of like shit, fuck, cunt, whatever the fuck the other words are. As long as they weren't saying those words, okay, we don't have to find them. But there's an old tape of Rush Limbaugh that I was listening to who was talking about people that had caught AIDS and he was happy that they died. It's a perfect example. They were just blasting that out into people's cars while they sat into traffic. That example, they took that example of going, that's successful, let's do that on TV. And they started the 24-hour news cycle. That's, you can pinpoint when the chaos began of people just being inserted brain rot all day, 24 hours a day. That's when it started to happen. And if you've ever been to an old person's house, I would say you run a 50-50 chance of there being a TV on somewhere just with Fox News on. It's just on, right? And so when you talk about people that are octogenarians, that are septuagenarians, so the people that are 65 years old, they're retired, they're 65 years old and up, they're retired, they're around the house all day, they've never had this kind of freedom in their life, and they just have the TV on in the background because they like the background noise. If you leave it on certain channels, all of a sudden some kind of weird program comes on and you don't want to hear this random program. So for whatever reason, the elderly will turn on the 24-hour news cycle and it'll just be back there. They'll hear it so many times that eventually it just becomes true to them, regardless of who, anything that is backing up the statement. They don't investigate the statement. There's no reason to investigate the statement. They just heard the thing. Like Disney's gone woke, right? We've all heard it. Disney's gone woke or whatever, right?
Shit.
And I see it when I'm in Alaska. When we go up to Alaska and we visit people's cabins up there, you have these people that are like, this is 100% the input that they are getting from the world. Like they don't have cell phone contacts. They don't have internet access that is at all reliable. If they do have internet access, they'll go on to whatever it is, Facebook, YouTube, any of that kind of stuff. And the thing that they've been looking at when they go on to internet sites like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitter, whatever the fuck you want to call them, all of these places are being operated by an algorithm that are going to force and funnel those people into the wacko echo chamber that they are going to get stuffed in by a computer, and they don't even realize that the computer is doing it to them. Because as we've seen from Senate hearings in the House, elderly lawmakers have no fucking clue what the internet is doing, how it is happening. They don't know what computers are. They never bothered to fucking learn about them, even though they came out when these people were full-blown adults and had all access to learn anything about this stuff. They never learned anything about it. When I was a kid, people in their 40s would yell at kids to go outside, don't fuck around with the computer, don't fuck around with video games. This is a stupid waste of time. Go outside. Get out of here. We'd go get on our bicycles, and we'd go right off into the sunset, go places, light things on fire, run into strange, weird people out in the woods, find all sorts of shit that our parents nowadays are flabbergasted when I tell them about shit. You know, I was in the 4th grade, and I found a giant porno stash in one of the newspaper recycling bins, and I distributed all of that porno that I found to any kid that I could find out, because we were out and about, and there was a newspaper recycling bin, and guess who crawled into it? This guy. What the fuck? What's in there? Oh, it looks like there's magazines in there. Sweet. I hopped in. Is it going to be magazines like a car magazine? Is it going to be
motorcycle or tattoo?
yeah, I mean motorcycles? Is it going to be comic books? Is it what's it going to be? A bunch of Playboys. And I mean,
You were at that age where they were switching from paper stuff to CDs or
And
DVDs.
I mean stacks and stacks and stacks of stacks and stacks and bundles and bundles and bundles of Playboys.
Sweet. A little young, but sweet.
Hold on. Let me look this up. I can actually find the date for you. Oh,
You're going to make me feel old.
here it is, right here. Actual date, because this magazine is now imprinted on my mind. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of things that I remember all of the time forever, because things just get pushed out of my brain. But here you go. This magazine cover here with Michael Jackson's sister on it will be permanently imprinted on my brain, and this was March 1989.
89.
Selling for $4.
1989. You were in 4th grade in 89? Oh, now I'm really old.
They were in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
You got to understand, these weren't. I didn't steal them off the shelf new. You understand?
We don't have theft to count amongst your sins in this instance. We have other things. Understood.
Right. So these weren't brand new. They were in bundles, but it wasn't March 1999 or 1989. I think it was March. I don't know if it was March. I don't know why I'm saying March, but it was it was like after the fact, right?
Right.
So it might have been like the next year, and then somebody decided to just throw them all, and a bunch of other magazines too. But that one was the one that there was the most of. Like it hadn't sold, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So it's one of those things that like that was the world that I lived in, and those people like just didn't even bother. The reason I bring that up is that because the people back then, they just didn't bother to
Worry who would get that stuff. Or
no, they didn't bother to. No. My point is those people back then did not bother to learn the computers or anything that was fucking happening. They stopped learning. This is it. I'm good. I'm 35 years old. I have a job.
Right.
I'm fine. I'm not gonna fucking learn anything. I'm gonna get off work. I'm gonna go mow my lawn. I'm gonna go sit in my armchair. I'm gonna ignore the fuck out of my kids. Right? Who knows what they're up to? Just get out of the house.
Street lights go off.
Yeah, just get out of here. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to drink cold beer. And then I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to do the same thing. And they'll do it over and over again until now they're 65 years old. And they have no idea what the internet is. What's the cloud? Right? Like, bitch, you've been alive for all of this shit being released, right?
Right.
It's not like you're 5 years old suddenly being introduced to like, a rainbow, you know? What? What's a rainbow? What's it doing? What? I'm 5. I've never seen a rainbow.
Adults. Those
Like
who
that.
were adults in '89 had seen black and white to color TV, most of them, or
Yeah,
televisions where they stopped being the remote control.
Yeah, most likely, right? You know, but like, that's the thing. At least it wasn't Playgirls. You guys would have had a complex after that. No, there were lots of Playgirls in there too. By the way, there were a bunch there for the girls. Yeah. Although back, I would say back then, I think it would be less traumatizing as a guy looking at sort of that sort of soft core pornography, whatever you want to call it, right? Like that magazine pornography, because they weren't so super obsessed with this idea that every dude will have a 12-pack and a foot and a half long dong, you know, like that's the obsession now, right? That's the.
And I have 5 godsons, and I used to tell their mothers, all of whom are single moms, that, you know, back in our day, you had to, work to find, not many people were finding porn stashes the way you were. Most boys or girls that went looking for it were lucky to find whatever dad had hidden in his sock drawer, A.
Right.
And B, I don't know that porn is ever tasteful per se, but unless they were out, you know, enjoying maybe Wii or some of the weirder penthouse variations, most of it was just, okay, these are bodies.
Yeah, like, okay, these are naked people. Yeah, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like what the internet serves up today, where it's like everybody's trying to one-up each other. There was a certain innocence to porn back even as late as when I was a kid that just does not exist now.
Right.
So, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's completely different now than it was back then, but the point is, when I hear the boomers talk about, they're like, oh, kids have access to all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm 44 years old. I was a kid that had access to all the exact same things that these dipshits are talking about, plus the fact that things were not even remotely as monitored as they are now. Like, I could just buy cigarettes when I was like 13.
Right.
Sometimes a guy at a convenience store would be like, "Get out of here, kid. You're not old enough," right?
Yeah.
That's it. That's all that would happen. A guy at a store would tell you to fuck off, basically, right?
Right.
That's it. That's the only thing that would happen.
Parents or anything
Yeah.
else. Yeah, my mom used to send me to the grocery store to buy her cigarettes until
Right.
I refused at around 10.
Well, that's the thing, is that like back then, if you had a decent story, like, oh, I'm just getting these from my dad, you know, or whatnot, you could get away with it. And by the way, I will say, like, when I was a kid, around the time I was like 23 or 24, I went bowling with my dad, and during that conversation, we were talking about stuff, whatever. And in the conversation that we were talking, it came up. My dad went, "Well, you only need to be 18 to buy beer, so it's not really like a big deal, you know." And I was like, "Dad,
You're
it's
allowed to
21. You have to be 21 to buy beer." And he was like, "No, you got to be 18." And I'm like, "I guarantee you it's 21. And that law went into effect since you've been alive. So you probably should have at least read the fucking newspaper or something, you know." And he was like, "Nah, it's 18. It was 18 when I was a kid. It was 18. It's 18 still." And I'm like, "No, they raised it, you know." I don't know. But it's one of those things where, like, you know, my dad's not a dumb guy. He's not an exceptionally intelligent guy either. I mean, he's not Einstein or whatever. But, like, for a guy to just be like, "Yeah, it's 18. You know, it's fine." You know, but if he was like working at a store or whatever, he would have just been like, "Yeah, you guys are old enough. It's fine." You know, and a lot of guys when I was a kid that worked at stores were like, "Yeah, here you go." don't care.
Yeah.
Not really paying attention. It wasn't really a penalty for them either, you know? It's like what was going to happen, you know?
I remember going in to get my grandfather and his neighbor in bars when I was a kid in Indiana.
There are still states where kids can legally drink. I think it's Wisconsin. Which state can you legally drink in bars with your parents? It's Wisconsin or Michigan or something like that. Yeah, here you go. As of April 2024, 8 states allow minors to drink in public restaurants or bars with parent consent. 8 states.
Wow.
Wisconsin, Texas, Ohio top the list. Where's the rest of them? Where is it? Learn more. Here we go. We have to go to the learn more.
Uh-oh.
Oh wait, no.
Make you log in.
What the? God damn it. Here we go. They have not put them in order. They've put every state here, and you have to read through the article on every single one. I just want to know the answer to the question that I fucking asked, which is the 8 states. Here we go. Washington State is one of them, by the way.
Just so you know, the last state to change from 18 to 21 was Idaho. It went into effect in October of 1986. I know because they chose to grandfather all the 19-year-olds who were drinking up until then, and my birthday was in May of 1986. And I spent 2 years living in Pullman without being a student.
Yeah.
And drinking in Scow way too long.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't figure out where it's the total of states, but Connecticut, Louisiana, Mississippi, Nevada, Ohio, Texas, Wisconsin, or Wyoming. And then I don't know. I mean, it's all mishmashed. I'd have to find a better article that actually just fucking lists it. But yeah, there's a bunch of states where you can just go into a bar and get drunk with your dad if your dad's there or your mom.
Do they have a minimum of like 16 on that, or is it any age?
I think it's any age. Pretty sure.
That's crazy.
And then
My 5-year-old a shot.
and then like there are like something like 30 states or something like that like, and Washington is also one of them, that if you're at an event, right? So let's say you have a wedding. Here's what's crazy. If you have a wedding, it's considered a religious event. So kids can drink for religious reasons.
Oh, there you go.
You have a religious exemption that says, this is our private event, so the kids can drink there, which is crazy. And I actually had, I forget what wedding it was at. It was at some wedding I was at, and they got like, the adults got all pissed that we weren't serving the kids, and they were like, you can serve the kids. This is a private event for religious. They have religious exemption. I'm like, you fucking people and your stupid religions. Like, this shit makes no sense, you know? But it is what it is.
We have to be able to get them loosened up for other things. Sorry,
Yeah,
I didn't say that.
probably. But either way.
Yeah, well.
All right, it's after 4 o'clock, and Olivia was hounding me this morning to make sure that I pick her up today from
Go ahead. Yep.
daycare. So she was like, you better pick me up today. And I was like, okay, I'll pick you up. I was basically gone all last week working on that thing, so I can see why. Thank you, Witchy Cat, for not only calling, but also $10 super chat, you know.
My pleasure.
Recently,
More again.
in a personal conversation recently, somebody was like, well, why don't you run for president? And I think last night was a perfect example of why I can't run for president. Kamala Harris got the nod, seemingly going to be the nominee, and they raised $50 million by 9 o'clock last night in that time frame. $50 million. Today we raised $10 minus the YouTube surcharge, so $6. We raised $6 today. We don't have the money. We don't have the money to run for president here. We don't have it. We don't even have the money to afford my internet and electric bill and gas bill combined. If we put those bills together, we don't even generate enough money to cover that. So, and over the weekend, I thought we had a new patron. I got an email that said we got a new patron. It said that Lady Guinevere came in as a $60 patron, and then it's not verified anywhere within my Patreon, so I don't know what happened. I got all excited, like we got a new Patreon, and at $60 is kind of a big deal. And then I don't know if it was a scam email or something, but either way, it's not verified, so I don't know what the hell happened. But either way,
I'll be back soon. I promise.
Will you be back soon? Yeah. Yeah, no worries. So yeah, that's what's going on around here for Monday, July 22nd. Back to work this week, and then out of town this weekend doing work. I got to go clear some land and try and make some money. I finished some jobs, and they did not pay as well as I had hoped. So we are on the grind, getting more jobs and trying to finish them and have happy customers. And so far, everybody happy. So that's good. Except my bank account. Not good. So we got to make the bank account more happy. That's what we got to do. We got to feed it.
Feed the beast.
Stuff. I don't know what we're going to feed it. We're going to feed it something. But that's what's going on today, and hopefully everyone's having a great one, and I will talk to the internet later.